Hey guys, welcome to the show. In this week's episode, we're going to review Bad Education. But before that, we're going to talk the Criterion poll winners for our next Casually Criterion, Wendy, Arkansas, the movie, not the state, Westworld Season 3, and Clone Wars' finale. It is a jam-packed episode, so join us.
Hello and welcome to the Casual Cinecast powered by Cinelinx. My name is Chris, and with me as always is a man who thought Wolverine was in Bad Education. Mike, how you doing today?
Pretty good. You know, I was just wondering, when were the X-Men gonna show up?
Yeah, I wanted his claws to come out at some point, but it never happened.
I just kept thinking everyone was Mystique. I was like, that's Mystique. No, that's Mystique.
Yeah.
That's Mystique. Nope, she'll come up any second now.
Right. Also with us is a man who wanted to watch Bad Education simply to learn how to embezzle. Justin, how are you doing today?
Good. I got a lot of notes, a lot of ideas. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. I wanted to watch Bad Education actually because I thought it was going to be the Almodovar movie, but it wasn't.
No.
Yeah, we fooled you.
Yeah. All right. And if this is your first time listening, normally we like to start off every episode in a section called News on the March, where we talk film and TV news or the movies and TV we've been watching, which is a lot under quarantine. Then we move into our feature review. This week we'll be discussing Bad Education. It's all time-stamped, so if you haven't seen the movie and you just want to hang out for a little bit, you can do that, and you can just hop around in the show notes accordingly. All right, guys, it is May the 4th as we record this.
Yes, it is.
And in honor of May the 4th, I had a Star Wars related question because this is, of course, Star Wars Day.
Yay.
Indeed. May the 4th be with you.
And also with you.
Thank you. Amen. Whoa, I threw myself off. Oh, yeah. So there was some news that broke today about Taika Waititi being announced to direct a Star Wars movie. And that got me wondering, guys, who would you want most to direct a Star Wars movie if you could be in charge of Lucasfilm right now?
Can I say Rian Johnson again?
You could. Is that your actual answer?
I wouldn't mind. I would have liked to have seen him get another shot at it.
Yeah, no, I mean, he still has that trilogy announced. I guess technically they could change their minds at any moment and let him get started. But
I guess it's probably not my real answer. Chris, go for a second, and then I will figure out mine.
I'm also thinking.
Oh, no, I actually had to think about my answer before I even decided to settle on this question. So I guess I can go first.
Yeah, you do that.
Okay. So I was thinking, okay, you know, we've gotten like the Ron Howard types. We've gotten, Gareth Evans or Edwards to come in there and do it. And those are all up and coming directors and all that. But I would like someone who's like at the top of their game and has been known to dive into genre, but doesn't primarily do that. And I'm thinking of Alfonso Cuarón.
Oh, yeah, that would be a good one.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
He doesn't really do this kind of thing. I mean, he's done Harry Potter, and he ended up with the best Harry Potter movie, in my opinion. So I would really love like his sensibilities to be included in Star Wars because Star Wars has always been kind of lighthearted and goofy, which is what it needs to remain. But also, I would like someone with like a really skilled eye at drama to be in there, like more than like Rian Johnson, you know.
Yeah.
Although I love Rian Johnson, don't get me wrong, but I don't know. I wonder what the tone of an Alfonso Cuarón Star Wars would be.
It'd be about two cousins and a girl traveling across Mexico or Tatooine, discovering their adulthood.
Yeah. Mon Mothma, that's a character, right? In Star Wars?
Yeah.
E2 Mothma and Tom Bien. There we go. I think that's an interesting shout. It would be maybe one of the most visually interesting Star Wars movies.
Yeah, because even the lesser good Star Wars movies of the Disney era have been at least visually pleasing. So like, I don't think they would let a Star Wars movie come out that doesn't look good. But
yeah,
Alfonso Cuarón's movies look exceptional, you know, all of them. So,
and he integrates special effects really well into his films.
Yeah, he does. So I don't know. I would like someone with like a truly artistic vision to get behind the camera of a Star Wars movie, and not just someone who's like used to churning out blockbusters.
Yeah.
More like the Rian Johnson approach, kind of like what you were wanting, I guess. But unfortunately, I don't know if that will ever happen again because of people.
Right. So I have, I guess, like two answers, and one of them being like, if I want a more actiony movie, I would turn to Christopher McQuarrie.
Oh, that'd be a good one. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's nailing the Mission Impossible ones, and I'd like to see, what he could do in the Star Wars world in terms of making some really good action. And the other thing that I would like to see is something a little darker, and maybe tap some of like this like newer, more recent like horror talent, like horror director talent that's out. And I would go with David Robert Mitchell, who directed It Follows and Under the Silver Lake, just to get some weird Star Wars movie. I think that would be fun.
That was a runner-up for me. Yeah.
I thought a good moody Star Wars movie.
Yeah, super moody.
I kind of went the same lines as you, Justin. I picked someone that does a lot of genre, but much darker genre than Star Wars. I picked S. Craig Zoller because he's already done a bunch of genre stuff, so I think he would fit in the Star Wars universe pretty well.
That would be weird. That would be so weird.
Very violent.
It would be like trashy violence too, like B-movie violence. That would be really interesting. He'd probably do something really controversial, like cast Mel Gibson as the lead.
Mel Gibson in a Star Wars
or
movie.
like Matthew Fox, or like these people that are like really like terrible people, but for some reason are good actors and people love them. Kind of. He always gravitates towards those. Like he in Bone Tomahawk, he had Matthew Fox from Lost, and that dude's like a crazy drunk, right? And no one hires that guy, but for some reason, S. Craig Zoller, he just thrives off that kind of like attention, I think.
I didn't know that about Matthew Fox.
You didn't know that? He beats women up on buses and stuff.
What?
Regularly, or that happened once?
I know there's been a couple of like times where he's been in trouble for violence, like domestic violence or violence against people. But I don't know. I don't keep up with Matthew Fox, and I haven't Googled him in years. So he may have cleaned up his act, but it happened.
Yeah. Okay.
And really, you only have to hit a woman on a bus once for me to not like you.
Yeah,
that's probably.
I think that's fair. That's enough.
Reasonable.
Well, good question, Mike.
Thank you. Thank you for inspiring and reminding me that it was May the 4th.
Yeah.
You're welcome. I didn't know till this morning. Like I knew it was like yesterday was the 3rd, right? But I never really think about Star Wars Day until I wake up and see, 55 May the 4th be with you post on Facebook or wherever. Twitter.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I kind of knew it, but didn't really think about it because the Clone Wars ended, which we might talk about here in a minute. So we should move on.
Yeah, let's do it.
So one of the things we do here on the Casual Cinecast when we're not talking about May the 4th or Star Wars directors that we want to direct Star Wars, we do Casually Criterion episodes, and that's where each of us picks a movie from the Criterion Collection that we want to watch, and then we put it out to you, the listeners, to vote on which of our 3 movies you guys want us to review and talk about. And we put it out on the interwebs, and we recently did that last week. And so we have an announcement to make. Mike, tell us who won our last poll.
Well, the Criterion winner for the theme of blind spots was, with 38.9%, Do the Right Thing, which was Justin's pick.
Thank you.
And then with 37.5% in second place was Rebecca.
Jeez.
Which was my pick.
So close.
And then 23.6% was Straw Dogs, which was Chris's pick.
Nobody wants the straw dog.
It seems the audience did not do the right thing with this poll.
No, they sure didn't, Rebecca. Right. I would have liked to have watched Straw Dogs the most out of this poll, I guess. I mean, I haven't seen Do the Right Thing or Rebecca, and that was the theme of the poll, of course, was like it was blind spots, and that's why I chose Do the Right Thing, but I really love Straw Dogs.
Yeah, and actually, I enjoyed Do the Right Thing. I just was most excited about seeing Rebecca because I've seen the other 2.
Nice.
I'm interested to see what Justin thinks about Do the Right Thing, because Justin is not the biggest Spike Lee fan.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, and I've seen a couple of his movies that I've, enjoyed enough. Liked. None of them I've been over the moon about, but this is apparently his masterpiece. So I'm very excited to see it. I trust that, if most of the people think that it's good, it's at least, good and not.
You should at least be able to take something from it.
Yeah. It has some value.
Yeah.
Well, cool. If you want to vote in our next poll, which we'll be putting out the next poll for our Criterion films on the next Criterion episode on Do the Right Thing, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Casual Cinecast. We put the poll on our Twitter, but we post the link to that on Facebook and not really on Instagram because you can't post links on Instagram. But you can also message us on any of those platforms if you have any questions or topics you want us to discuss about the movies we're reviewing each week. You can also email us at casualcinemedia@gmail.com. And then, of course, if you haven't done so already, go onto iTunes, give us a 5-star review. Let us know that you love the show. Let other people know that we're a good show worth listening to. And we will be forever grateful.
And so will they.
Yes, forever.
All right, guys. I say we go ahead and move on into News on the March.
Yes, please.
News on the March.
All right, so before we get into Season 3 of Westworld and the series finale of The Clone Wars, Justin, I believe you watched a couple things this week.
I did, yeah. I'll start first with a film that I watched through a friend of the show and I think 2-time guest, Matt Ward. He is part of the Film Independent Spirit Awards, which I believe he talked about on his last appearance on the show. And through that, you get screeners, you get to watch some films, and with COVID-19 going on, they're doing like passes to go to watch some of the films. And through his membership there, he had an additional pass to give out for a film that is coming out soon. I think by the time you hear this, it'll be out on VOD. But that film was Arkansas from Clark Duke, and it stars Clark Duke and...
Wait, Clark Duke, like the Michael Cera's old comedy partner?
Yep, who was briefly in The American Office season 9. And
yeah, he was.
Among Hot Tub Time Machine, I think a lot of people know him from.
Yeah, that's his claim to fame, I think.
Yeah, I think so. For the general public. But yeah, so Clark Duke directed it. He is one of the lead roles in the movie alongside Liam Hemsworth. Vince Vaughn is also in this movie, as well as John Malkovich. And
interesting cast.
A very interesting cast. And I didn't know a lot about this movie. Matt just contacted me and said, hey, I got this extra pass. Do you want to watch this film early before it comes out? And I said, yeah, sure. Why not? I like Clark Duke. I haven't seen him do anything in a while, so we'll see what this is. And I got a little intrigued and or worried whenever I read that this was a crime drama, which is not what I would expect from Clark Duke to either direct or act in.
Right. Yeah.
And
same.
So anyway, so I watched the movie over the weekend. I had 48-hour access to it, and I have to say it's pretty disappointing. I'm not a very big fan of this movie, which makes me sad because I tried really hard throughout the movie to give it a shot, right? Because I do like Clark Duke. I like Vince Vaughn. I like John Malkovich. I like all of these like actors that are in it. So as I'm watching the movie and I'm not liking it, I'm kind of like sitting there thinking, okay,
is it me?
Yeah, is it me? Am I just not on the right wavelength to this film? Is this film going to be something different than what it currently is? Because what I realized pretty quickly into the movie was that Clark Duke basically threw like, I guess what you would call like standard like film school person like influences into this film, like in a blender. Like he threw like Tarantino and the Coen brothers and Martin Scorsese like crime films into a blender and kind of came out with this movie. And it's so apparent to me that he was trying hard to do this that I thought maybe he's operating on another level and this is some kind of commentary on this sort of like Tarantino Scorsese crime film, and I kept kind of waiting for the like other shoe to drop and me to like realize that this film is like somehow like self-aware and has something to say. And I think by the end, I came to the conclusion that it's not. It's just very much what feels like if like a film school person like had a ton of money and a ton of backing and the clout that Clark Duke has to get these actors and to get financing for his film. But it just feels like a poor imitation
Yeah, I know what movie you're talking about. I haven't seen a trailer or anything, but I've seen the poster. I didn't know Clark Duke had anything to do with it. But yeah, it didn't strike me as like a particularly interesting looking movie, but I don't know. This almost makes me want to see it more than I did. Your disappointment in the fact that it's written and directed by Clark Duke.
Yeah.
It is intriguing.
In this cast. I don't know. Like, I mean, it just feels like there's too many like things working that I like.
Yeah.
But like, I believe you when you say it's bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I'll give you some examples of things. Like, you've got sort of textbook Tarantino criminals being like fun, or like having like conversations about like pop culture and things. Like Clark Duke's character at one point goes on a rant to his girlfriend about how all the zombie movies are coming out now, and like Walking Dead and all of that are just because the world's in such a bad place that everybody subconsciously wants it to end and wants the apocalypse to happen, which is
bad timing.
Sort of yeah, I mean, that is that. But it seemed like a very Tarantino thing to like try to incorporate this like pop culture genre or staple and like make some bigger message out of it. Also, the film is separated into chapters where a chapter title pops up on the screen. And
why?
I don't know.
If you're going to do a chapter thing, you have to earn it.
You do. And I don't think he does in this. There's some very interesting performance choices from John Malkovich in this, which might be worth watching if this comes out on a streaming service and you can watch it for free. I don't advise paying to rent this movie, but when John Malkovich popped up in this movie in the first scene and he started doing what he does in it, I was taken aback. It's one of those things that I was like, is this movie, this has to be like self-aware, but I don't think so. I don't know.
Nah, it's just like John Malkovich, Christopher Walken, like these guys that are larger than life. I feel like no one knows how to rein these guys in later on in their careers sometimes.
He makes some unique choices. That is like him making an interesting choice is not special to this movie. Like, he's always doing something weird and towing that line between going too far, I think.
That's why I love him in Burn After Reading.
Yes.
I think it's my favorite John Malkovich performance.
Well, this is very weird. Much weirder than that, I will say. But yeah, I don't know. It just kind of, it's a meandering movie, and I felt like it just didn't really see its own shortcomings, or it's like you're watching a poor imitation of something and it didn't quite realize that it was that obvious to the viewers. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, totally.
Well,
I've seen enough student films to know exactly what you're describing.
Yeah. But you guys watch it and let me know. I watch it for free if you want, but I can't advise going to out of your way. Like, yeah, I'll leave Arkansas at that unless you guys have anything else you want to know about it.
Nope.
Cool. Well, we'll move more positive. I started with the negative to another film that I watched because it was the actual number one most anticipated film on my list way back. Seems like forever ago, but at the start of 2019 or 2020.
It does seem like forever ago.
We did our most anticipated films of 2020, and this was my number one, which was Wendy from Ben Zeitlin, who was the director of a film that I really liked called Beasts of the Southern Wild.
Yeah.
But
I like Beasts of the Southern Wild.
Yeah, it's really great. And so this is the film that he's done immediately after that, like Beasts of the Southern Wild, I think came out in 2012 or 2013. I think 2012.
Yeah.
And
it feels like it's been a while.
Yeah, it's been 8 years. And so he finally come out with another movie. So I was very excited. I saw the trailer for it. I thought it looked great. It screened at Sundance, I believe. And then I don't know if it was part of the plans or just with all of the COVID quarantine stuff. I found out the other day that it was available for rent on Amazon for like $6.
It was actually released theatrically, but it was like 1 week before everything shut down, so they didn't get much of a run at it.
Well, that's a bummer, but I was pleasantly surprised to see that it was available. So I pretty much within a couple of days was like, all right, I have to watch this now. So I rented it. I watched it. Basically, this is an adaptation of the Peter Pan story. There's a girl named Wendy, and she runs off with a boy and with her brothers to an island where kids supposedly never grow up, and there's sort of this weird like kind of Terrence Malick-y, kind of Lord of the Flies vibe to this film. If you've seen Beasts of the Southern Wild, it's kind of similar in tone. I won't really say much more than that because I don't want to spoil it, but it's not like a straight up adaptation. It's a bit more real in some places. It's a bit not realistic, and there's like some fantastic elements in there. And ultimately, I didn't love the film as much as I wanted to. And I think the thing that kind of kept me a little bit distant from it is a couple of the kids' performances in it. Didn't quite land for me. Have either of you guys seen this movie, by the way?
I haven't. I saw that it came out too, and I meant to get to it last week, but I just didn't have an opportunity.
Yeah, and it was disappointing because so much of this film is like amazing to me. Like, I think it looks fantastic. I think a lot of the kids' performances are really good. The kids that he uses are, at least the good ones, I guess, are they're all interesting to look at. Whether or not they're acting is great. And then like also the score is amazing. I've actually been listening to it at work while I'm working all week. Even though I didn't love the movie, I did like it. The score is kind of the thing that's like really stuck with me. I ended up listening to a lot, but also I just think it's a really unique and interesting take on like the Peter Pan thing. It's hard to go into too much of it without spoiling it, and I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but I would definitely recommend this film. It's not as like dark and twisted as like Lord of the Flies, despite I didn't want to give that impression. Like, it is very much like it's a PG-13 movie. I think would be good for like teens and stuff. There's maybe a little bit of violence, but yeah, I don't know. I liked it a lot despite not loving it.
That's cool. I mean, so worthy of your most anticipated list in retrospect?
Generally, no. Like, not in the sense that, you know, the year before Parasite was on my number one, like, most anticipated films for 2019, right. And that ended up being awesome. So I kind of, comparatively, I've kind of struck out with Wendy. You know, I didn't quite hit a home run like I did with Parasite.
Well, not every movie can be Parasite. In fact, most movies cannot be Parasite.
Yeah.
So that is Wendy.
Yeah. So that's one recommendation for Wendy and one not recommendation for Arkansas from me.
Cool. So I'll go next real quick. Before we start talking about Westworld, Chris, I just wanted to mention really fast. Today's May the 4th. The last episode of The Clone Wars came out today. And I just wanted to say real quick, it's really good. Again, I talked about this not too long ago, so I'll keep it very brief. But right now we are reaching the end of The Clone Wars, which had kind of a rough start as a series. The first couple seasons aren't the best, and the episodes are kind of out of order. But once you kind of get into it, once you get on its wavelength, it's actually a really rewarding show. And I think some of the best Star Wars is contained within The Clone Wars. And I'll just say that these last 4 episodes have been the best episodes of The Clone Wars, I think. And probably some of the best Star Wars, period. You know, I mean, it's up there. Like, I would rather watch these last 4 episodes of The Clone Wars as one movie than I would rather watch like any of the prequels.
Right.
You know what I mean? And what would be really cool, I don't know if it would work or not because one's a cartoon and one's a movie, but the last 4 episodes take place during Revenge of the Sith, which is episode 3 of the movies. And it could be done where you could actually like splice in between movies and episodes of a TV show. Like if you wanted to make like a 4-hour cut of like Revenge of the Sith or something, you know, which I'm sure someone on YouTube is going to do. You could actually like splice in scenes that like flesh out the movie more and make the movie better, which is a movie that could use some improving, even though I actually like Revenge of the Sith, but it's weird and it's one of the prequels, right? So it's a little flawed. Anyway, so if you even have like a passing interest in Star Wars and you happen to like Revenge of the Sith a little bit, maybe check out these last 4 episodes of the Clone Wars, even if you can't watch any other Clone Wars, because it makes the movie better, in my opinion.
Nice. If you were to go into those 4 and watch them without having watched the rest, is it going to diminish your ability to rewatch the rest of the series?
In my opinion, it might make you more interested when you watch the rest of the series. But then again, I don't know. I mean, I can only speak for me, but like for example, like I find when I'm watching the Clone Wars, a lot of the arcs are about the clones themselves. And they all have the same character model with like different hairstyles or tattoos, so you can tell them apart, right? Mm-hmm. And they all have different names, like the clones that you're supposed to follow. And the main one is Rex, and he has some like, friends that come and go throughout the series. But I never was able to get emotionally invested in many of them. But this last season has kind of showed me that like which ones were important and which ones had poignant ends to them. Right. So it's kind of like going back and watching some of those episodes now. I'm like, oh, yeah. I remember this. That is good in retrospect. But I didn't enjoy it as much as I would have if there was emotional stakes at the time. So it's like a weird thing where it's like the ending of the show actually makes me feel better about the beginning of the show that I didn't love as much.
That's always good.
If anyone's actually wanting to watch this, they have those 20 episodes like the Essential Clone Wars on Disney Plus that you could watch. Or if you wanted to go through and just watch specific stuff, start the show when Maul joins the scene and just follow Maul's arc throughout the Clone Wars. As long as you get to know Ahsoka and Maul and then Rex, you can't go wrong. So anyways, it's really good. And I think you guys would really like these last 4 episodes quite a bit too, if you have any interest in Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah, I do. I like that movie.
Yeah.
I know we saw it like 5 times in theaters for some reason.
We did. I don't know why either, but we saw a lot of movies multiple times that we probably shouldn't have in those days.
That's true.
Looking at you, War of the Worlds, and
Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
Mr. and Mrs. Smith. I saw Bewitched a couple times, the Will Ferrell, Nicole Kidman.
Yeah, I didn't even like that movie at all, even.
Me neither, but I saw it multiple times.
Yeah.
Weird
you live,
days.
you learn, you know?
Yeah. Anyways.
All right, so anyway, that's the Clone Wars. I really like this last season.
You've been singing its praises, I think, since this last season started airing. So, I think it's about time that I have to watch it. As usual, fashionably late to the party. I watch things after they're over or just about to end.
Well, that's the best time to do it. Then you can binge it and not be part of like the toxic conversations around the waiting for things.
True. That's a good point.
Okay, so anyways, that's all I really wanted to say about that. I will probably be done talking about Clone Wars for the foreseeable future because it's over. So, Chris, I believe you and I both watched the finale of Westworld last night.
Yeah, Westworld is a show I really, really enjoyed the first season a lot. And the second season kind of left me wanting a little bit. And the third season is kind of a mixed bag. And so I'm going to be interested in hearing what you have to say about the third season. I think, as far as my opinion of it goes, for some reason I'm still interested and still want to find out what happens to the characters. However, I don't think it's that great of a show, or what it once was, it no longer is. It's very different than what it was in the first season or even the second season. It'll be interesting to see what happens because they've just recently renewed it for a 4th season, and there's talks of going to 6 seasons possibly. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Mike, what did you think of Westworld? And we can dive into it a bit.
Sure. So I think, I think season 1 is the best season for sure. Season 2, I liked it, but I wasn't emotionally invested in it anymore in season 2 because it became more about the puzzle than it became about any kind of like being able to track a character's emotional journey through any kind of thing. Right. I will say that I think season 3 is a stronger season than 2. Like, I think season 2 is more of a mixed bag than season 3 is. I think season 3 is more consistently good throughout and more focused and 2 episodes shorter, I might add.
Yeah, that's part of it too.
That said, it's not perfect. I in fact, the only time I really felt myself not enjoying this season was probably episode like 3 or 4. I can't remember. Mid-season.
The middle part of it's kind of, yeah.
Yeah, there was just a little too much like not being able to track characters' emotional journeys. But when this show is working, it really works. Like, what I will say is like their vision of what society in the future is going to look like in a few years strikes me as very not hard to imagine. And that terrifies me a little bit. Maybe not some of the more grand elements of it, but I definitely can see it if things keep going the way they are now. a future where everywhere kind of sucks.
Yeah.
Here's what I'll say. If the show had ended this season, I would have been okay with it. The show
that was kind of... Oh,
go
good. I was going to just say that like that was kind of the rumor at the beginning of the season was that this would be the last one. They hadn't announced it yet, but that would be
I heard that rumor from, I won't name them here on our little podcast, but I've heard that perpetuated by a certain podcaster who is very prominent, but I never got the impression that they were trying to wrap it up this season. And I never got the impression based on everything that they've been saying that they were trying to wrap it up this season. But I have heard people assume that. And I think it's perpetuated from that source.
That may be. What I would say is it makes sense for them not to announce that it's the last season. Well, it doesn't necessarily. Yeah. But it makes sense for Jonathan Nolan and company not to announce because they like the puzzle box like that they surprise you at the end. However, HBO wants to make money on the last season, so they're going to
they just got done launching HBO Max or whatever.
Yeah.
And so they're in desperate need of content. And, even though Westworld ratings aren't Game of Thrones ratings and season 3 ratings aren't season 1 of Westworld ratings, it's still the highest rated show they've got going on right now, I think. Here's what I'll say is like, it's a mixed bag. This show has always been at its best, brilliant sci-fi and at its worst, clunkily made genre.
Yeah.
And like, I think here's my big problem. Hold your thought. Here's my big problem with the show is I like the ideas. I like season 3's pacing for the most part, but here's where I think the show was the weakest. In the first few episodes, they need to hire directors that are better at filming action.
Well, there's certainly that. Especially there's something going on in those first few episodes because the action got better in the last few episodes.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think they saved their money and their talented like A-list directors for like the good stuff. But then you have like scenes where like literally a man chases 5 dudes down with guns and he has nothing but an axe and they turn and run from him. That might be the worst thing I've seen in the entire show and killed the momentum of the season for a good 2 episodes before I was able to forget it. You know how things can do that. Remember in Watchmen in episode 6, whenever like I didn't want the drug to be like the thing it was, and then it ruined it for me for a while.
Yeah.
That's very much how I felt about Westworld. And like, every time I find myself able to get back into Westworld, they'll do something like that where like it's just badly executed stuff.
Yeah, even in the last episodes, and the action was better, but the bad guys all have stormtrooper syndrome. Like they cannot hit something that's right in front of them, and they have these like crazy.
And they don't even seem
guns.
to try to fire a gun when like, they just wait around.
Yeah, there's certainly the choreography and stuff in it isn't super great. And I guess what I would say is like just to wrap it up, kind of, but like I really love the first season because it was in the West, and I love that aspect of it. And while it's still kind of there, like they're changing it, but like I just fell in love with Westworld as like that Western show, and I fell in love with the vistas, and it's really hard for me to move on past that, and maybe that's why I like season 2 more than 3, to a certain extent, because even though it's more messy, season 2 is certainly more messy because they mess with the timeline and stuff, but it's still in the West and it's still like it feels like it originally felt. I don't know. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I'll definitely watch season 4. Yeah,
I agree with you to an extent, but also by the end of season 2, I was done with that place, man.
Yeah, I guess that's true too. And nothing is tapped or capped. Like you talked about emotional resonance and emotional like attachment, and I think the last time I felt emotional attachment was like to William, like in that and his arc. And since
he's the only character that I ever feel any emotional attachment to in this show.
Yeah, I mean Dolores at the beginning too, but like it's hard because she's a robot, so you're like, anyways. But yeah, I haven't really felt a lot of emotion in that show, and I think that's kind of the game. And the other thing, one more thing too, is like devs. A lot of the stuff we talked about devs a couple weeks back, and a lot of the stuff that's in this season of Westworld was done so much better. Well, they're different shows. I just would think that devs like delved into it and tackled those ideas in a non-action way. I don't know. It's interesting how both those shows like tackled the same ideas, sort of, but in very different ways. And I just prefer devs.
Well, yeah, it's hard because like there's the show that we all want Westworld to be. But then like Westworld is also, it's trying to be a genre show with really, really smart ideas behind it.
Yeah.
And it does that. But
Yeah.
it's just not particularly good at the genre element of it.
Yeah, which is a shame.
Which is very much a shame because that's why most people are tuning in. So anyways, I don't know. To answer your question, I am more excited about a season 4 than I was at the beginning of season 3.
Yeah. This was kind
Let's
of
put
a
it that
negative, what's on our mind, except for Clone Wars.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I like I said, I liked it. I don't know. I feel like the last half of the season, I think, was strong.
Yeah.
So yeah, Westworld. It's a show that it's coming back for season 4, and I will watch it. Yeah, I don't know if it's got 6 seasons in it. I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to see where else they have to go from here. I can think of like one more season, but who knows? I'm not the creator.
They'll find a way if there's money at the end of the road.
Life,
That's true.
finds a way.
Like, that's not Westworld, is it? That's Jurassic Park.
It is, but
it's
Michael
bo-
Crichton.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, connection. Go ahead.
And plus, Westworld is basically just Jurassic Park with robots.
Exactly.
Anyways. All right. What do you guys say we move on into our feature review of Bad Education?
Let's go.
This is a very real crime here, a theft of taxpayer money.
The sum total is $250,000.
What?
Jeez,
$250,000?
Everything's fine.
You can't jump the gun here, not when there's this much at stake. We need to know what we're dealing with.
Frank,
After everything we've worked for.
Frank,
To get this far.
Frank.
You have nothing to worry about. Frank's gonna fix this.
All right. So as always with our newer, more recent films, we will be doing a spoiler-free section up front where we will be talking very generally about the film, not giving away any major details, just kind of giving our general impressions. And then we will give you a spoiler alert and then play a bumper so that you have plenty of time to pause the podcast, go watch Bad Education, and then come back and finish up when you're done.
All right. So, Bad Education was directed by Corey Finley, starring Hugh Jackman, Allison Janney, Ray Romano, and Geraldine Viswanathan?
Viswanathan?
What a name. Okay. IMDb synopsis. The beloved superintendent of New York's Roslyn School District and his staff, friends, and relatives become the prime suspects in the unfolding of the single largest public school embezzlement scandal in American history.
Well done. On the first
Yeah,
try,
it only
too.
took me like 5 times. I mean, once.
Yes.
It's a long sentence.
It is. It's a long sentence for not that long of a movie. I've seen longer movies with shorter sentences.
Right? That's what I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. So, who wants to get us started on their overall thoughts on Bad Education?
I can kick it off if you guys are
Ooh, Chris volunteering to go first?
in agreement.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so Bad Education was a film, like when we were taking a look at what movies we wanted to watch, new movies that had come out. The first thing that struck me was Corey Finley, because he also directed Thoroughbreds that came out 2018, I believe it was. And that was, I think, on a couple of our top 10 lists, at least Justin mine's. Was it on yours, Mike?
It wasn't on my final top 10, but I really liked it.
Yeah. So it was a movie that we all really liked, and I was eager to see what he does on his next film and to see where it goes, what and how he grows as a filmmaker. I didn't really know much about the story or anything like that, but like once I dove into the movie, I just watched this today, so I'm still processing it. But I really enjoyed Hugh Jackman in this. This is definitely. I think sometimes I get complacent about Hugh Jackman and certain actors, and every once in a while they'll do like interesting parts, and Hugh Jackman's a good actor. Like I sometimes forget that, that he's a really good actor. I think he's really solid in this, and Allison Janney's in this, and Ray Romano.
I think it's Janny.
Janney? I think it's Janney. That's what I've always heard. But it doesn't matter. Ray Romano's really good. In this, Ray Romano is such a good supporting actor. Like I don't know what it is about him as a person, but like he just nails the sidekick, and he does a really good job, you know, like in that, like The Irishman and stuff like that. He's good in those movies, and I like the direction of this film. I thought the choice of music was really good. I like that it kind of reminded me a little bit of Barry Lyndon a little bit, and I think I've recently just watched it, so maybe it's just in my head. But like, I think the whole movie is like one take of Barry Lyndon. We start up very close, and then we just slowly pull back. So we're very close to Hugh Jackman. We just slowly pull back, and we see more and more and more of what's going on and more of the story. And I found that take and that way of showing us what's going on in the story really interesting, and a way that you could tell this story in a compelling way. Because this story, being a true story about embezzlement, very easily could have been a Lifetime movie, like a made-for-TV movie, and just kind of been boring. But this is not that. I was pretty riveted the whole time and enjoyed it quite a bit. So, Justin, what did you think?
Well, I'm right there with you. My entry into this movie was Corey Finley. On the surface, it's not necessarily a movie where like the story's going to grab me, because I did read what it was about, that it was about this public school embezzlement scandal. And I was like, well, that sounds like it could be interesting, but it's not hooking me. So I was basically all on board for like the cast, Hugh Jackman, Ray Romano, Allison Janney, and the director. Like that's basically what sold me on it. And I think none of those things really disappointed for me. I thought the performance was good. I thought the direction was really good in terms of establishing tone. There was a lot of, similar to Barry Lyndon, use of zoom lenses and some like really interesting, well-timed zooms for suspense and just to add like tension and tone to this film, to kind of put it up to that next level where it didn't end up becoming a sort of bland, based on a true story thing, something like The Post was. I think the direction certainly elevates it above something like that. I was interested in it the whole time. Like I ended up being very intrigued. I like this. I don't know if it's a fascination that Corey Finley has, but he has these like sociopathic characters that he's interested in, and interested in stories about them. And so that's kind of a theme between the two movies that I found very interesting. And the way that he tells us about these characters and lets us know about these characters and kind of see into their psyche, I think is really well done. And one of the best things about Thoroughbreds, and one of the best things about this movie. I think, all of that said, I don't know that it's a movie that I'm going to really rewatch maybe ever. I don't really feel that with this film. I don't feel like it's something I can like glean a lot out of on rewatches. I could be wrong, and maybe one day I'll end up rewatching it. But I think basically what I'm saying is like it's a film that I like and thought it was like really well made, but it kind of has a ceiling, I think. And it's not going to be a film I love. It's not going to be a film that I revisit. I can't imagine it making it onto like a top 10 list at the end of the year if we, have 10 movies that come out this year that we can review and watch. That would be the only way that this would make it on there, which again isn't really a negative thing about the movie, because it's all really well made. And I don't know, does anyone know if this movie was like produced for HBO specifically? Like, is it kind of a made for TV movie in that sense, or did HBO just buy it?
I don't know. I was actually wondering that same thing.
Yeah, it says production company is HBO Films on IMDb.
Yeah, so it sounds like it was an HBO joint.
There was something about it, I think, that kept me feeling like it was a little bit lower budget, at least coming off of Thoroughbreds. And I don't know if that's part of that is like some of the visual choices they make in this movie, because the movie does actually kind of look like things looked in 2002. Like there's some imperfections in like the film, if they used film, or if, the way that they made the digital look kind of imperfect.
A lot of like high contrast and stuff.
Yeah, high contrast. I noticed some like real noticeable like grain, and it's things like, I just so happened to have recently rewatched The Faculty, and
nice.
And yeah, which was great. And some of the Scream movies from like the late 90s, early 2000s. And I don't know, they have this like grain structure to them from the film that I felt like I could see in Bad Education. And maybe that's a choice. And maybe it's just like a little bit cheaper of a production. I don't know. But I think it's worth your while. So I'll leave it there and toss it over to Mike.
Well, real quick on your question, I quickly Wikipedia'd it. So it premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival on September 8th, 2019, and shortly after HBO Films acquired the distribution rights to the film. So it wasn't made specifically for HBO Films, but they acquired it after they saw it.
Interesting. I felt like Thoroughbreds was maybe more of an indie production, and I feel like that movie seems like a higher production quality, production value. But
it could be that he had more money on Thoroughbreds too.
Yeah, very possible. But anyways, toss it over to Mike. What do you think of Bad Education?
Well, real quick, I just want to say I also Googled something, and it is Allison Janney. I just wanted to say, not Janie.
How do you, well, whatever. Okay. I'll go with that.
Google it. It won't take you long to figure it out. So yeah, Bad Education. I think this movie's pretty good. I kind of like Justin in the sense that I think there is a limit to how much I'm capable of liking this movie, through no fault of the movies. It's just kind of one of those things where it's like it's not it's not my favorite kind of movie, I guess. It's good. It's well acted. I think Hugh Jackman's great. This is probably the best I've seen Hugh Jackman, maybe ever, at least in a long time.
Yeah, a long time for sure.
Yeah, I'm so glad he's done with the Wolverine stuff. And you know, it just struck me when I was watching this movie. I'd never noticed it before. Hugh Jackman's old.
Yeah,
he's looking old these days. You know, that said, it's good to kind of see him be like a normal guy. I don't know that Hugh Jackman gets to be normal very often. Like I think the movies I'm most familiar with Hugh Jackman in are like Swordfish, like the Wolverine movies, and then what's that movie? Oh man,
Australia.
Yep, that's the one.
Oh really?
Yep, that's the one. And none of those movies is he a normal guy.
No.
So it's interesting to see Hugh Jackman be normal and like look his age and not have to like put a bunch of makeup on to try to look like a guy who doesn't age, you know? Right. I think Allison Janney is really good here. She's an actress that, I don't know, I like her in some things and then some things I don't. But I think she's perfect for this role.
Yeah, she's really great. I mean, she's kind of turned out a bunch of really great performances over the last several years.
Yeah, she's kind of turned it around, I guess, in the last few years. And I don't know, I guess before wasn't she mainly a lot of TV?
She was
sitcoms?
in Westworld that she was amazing in.
She was what?
Not Westworld, West Wing.
West Wing, okay.
What? You missed that entirely, her arc on Westworld.
Yeah. Man, I actually need to really go back and rewatch season 2.
Well, she did a lot of comedy early on, too. Like, that's where I was more familiar with her. You know, she's a small role in, like, 10 Things I Hate About You and supporting role in Drop Dead Gorgeous, which are films I like and films I like her in. But there was very much these...
I forgot about Drop Dead Gorgeous.
Yeah, it's great. I think it's super funny. But she did a lot of these like smaller comedy roles, you know. But now she's really Juno. She was like the mom in Juno, too. But now, she's turning these kind of like more dramatic roles, which is super fun.
Yeah, I'm all on board for that because this is the Allison Janney that I'm all about. Corey Finley. I'm kind of with you, Justin, which is this. I wouldn't have pegged this as like a Corey Finley movie. It's well directed. And I've only seen one Corey Finley movie, but it had so much style and in like a unique way of being shot. And this movie is good and it's well directed, but it seems very straightforward and not so much like a vision or a style that like I felt in Thoroughbreds, which isn't a bad thing, right? I just think it's interesting. This is more of like a straightforward, accessible film for like I think mass appeal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I also think it's a little bit more subtle in its style.
Oh, yeah, yeah, definitely. That's what I'm saying. It's like, it's
not
Thoroughbreds felt like very much like he had a voice and a vision. And this movie feels very much like just a good director who knows what he's doing. Both good. I wonder if Corey Finley's going to, when he goes to make his third film, I wonder if he's going to stick more to like the traditional storytelling like in this, or if he'll go back to like the quirky weirdness of Thoroughbreds.
Yeah. I think this movie kind of calls for a little bit of regular filmmaking, I guess.
Me too.
And also
Yeah.
you have the setting of a school and a school building office. That's kind of our main set.
Not the
With
wackiest of places.
Thoroughbreds, you get like a crazy rich people's houses and, lots of like posh lifestyle to play with.
Tracking shots and stuff.
Yeah. Well, there's tracking shots in this.
Yeah,
Some good
that's
ones.
true,
But anyway, that's kind of where I'm at right now. I think this is a good movie. If I had to rate it out of 5, I think I'm sitting at like a 3.5.
Yeah. That's where
But-
I'm at.
With that said, exceptional performances. The performances almost boosted up to a 4 for me, just because I think Hugh Jackman is quite watchable in this.
Yeah, he's really good. I had a thing that occurred to me, and while I was watching it, it occurred to me, and then Justin said that he wouldn't necessarily want to go back and watch this, but while I was watching it the first time, I kind of thought that this is one of those movies that might be darkly humorous, and upon a second watching might become more funny, like, because it's one of those things where you know where the characters are going, and so like their responses and the way they respond to things, and I found it funny the first time in certain aspects, but I think a second viewing it could be even funnier in that dark, like Paul Thomas Anderson watch it the second time in its funnier way.
Yeah.
I was wondering how you guys felt about that.
Yeah, I could totally see that, I think, without going into details, because we're obviously in non-spoilers here, but yeah, once you know where characters are, like by the end of the movie, watching the way that they act in the beginning would be fun.
Mm-hmm.
Because you kind of watch them not tell the whole truth or whatever,
Right. And then also character dynamics and like characters' relationships with one another. Whereas before, I was taking it as like vaguely like threatening or vaguely angry or malicious or something like that. In retrospect, you look at it and it's just like I don't know, people calling one another out for crap, I guess, or like it's almost kind of funny, the antagonism and like the way people treat one another when you kind of fully understand the context of the relationship.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
I also think this feels like a story that, while it worked really well, and this, I don't remember how long it is, like hour and 45-minute movie, hour 50 minutes. It feels like a story that would have ended up as like a Netflix true crime 10-episode series.
Yeah, or like a 10-episode just TV show on Netflix about this. Yeah.
It just has all of these like characters and like weird twists and turns that you don't necessarily see coming. I guess I don't know if you guys felt this, but there are things that have felt sort of like questionable. I was like, I know this is based on a real story, but is all of this accurate? Because some of this is like kind of wild and weird. It's like almost like you see it and you don't necessarily want to believe it, which I think a lot of those like Netflix true crime stories tend to have those elements.
Yeah, it's almost like the more of those elements they have, the bigger hit it will be.
Right. Which is why I think this would have been a successful one of those.
Yeah. All right. Do we have anything else before we get into spoilers?
No, I'm good to go for spoilers.
Good to go.
No, I guess Rosebud is just a piece in a jigsaw puzzle.
Any more cigarettes you got up there? I'll tell you all about it.
Things are going to start happening to me now.
And here we go.
Now that we're in spoilers, just quickly what we were talking about before is like, I found all of the stuff about Hugh Jackman's character having this other relationship with like the kid that used to go to his school, I assume, or he used to like teach him in school, that he runs into in Las Vegas, having that while he's also got like a husband that nobody knows about back in New York that he's been telling everyone he has like a long dead wife. Like that just seemed like so crazy that I was like, is this embellished at all? Like, is this I could look it up, but sometimes I like just wondering,
Yeah. That was the part where like the movie really started to pick up for me, I guess, because probably for the same reason, because I was like, man, this is pretty wacky. Like whenever the girl from Blockers, I forget her name in the movie and in real life, but the girl from Blockers, when she was like researching everything and like she knocks on the door,
Rachel Bargava is the character's name.
There you go. Anyway, yeah, but which by the way, she was really good in it.
Everybody's really good in it, but yeah.
Yeah, but I love the scene whenever Hugh Jackman is like going into the apartment, and then like they make eye contact for a minute. That was good.
Yeah,
it's good stuff.
I like the scene after, or shortly thereafter, where he goes and approaches her on the bench outside of the school. Has that like faux guidance conversation where he's really just trying to intimidate her.
Yeah. It's interesting the way he plays things, like his character.
I mean, that's also a revelation about her father too. So we get that, and he implies about her father, which we don't know about yet, because her father was part of an insider trading thing, or at least he was attached to the people that did insider trading, and we don't know about that, but he implies about it. And so that's like, you know, we just continually move back and like more and more about the story is revealed to us, and I really enjoy that aspect of it, where the characters know more than we do, you know.
Yeah, there's a sense of a natural unfolding that happens whenever stories can do that, where they're layered enough and nuanced enough to where they know exactly what little bits of information are going to like make you question the dynamics of everything that you saw before, you know? I always admire that in stories like where it's like if they would have started the movie out and we would have known Hugh Jackman was in on it and was a criminal, that would have been a fine way to go. You know what I mean? That wouldn't have made a bad movie. But the idea of like, even though everyone could probably see it coming, the idea of keeping it and slowly unveiling that information, a little bit of information at a time, it was a smart choice for this movie, I think. And it's always interesting, like when movies are getting made or being written, it's always interesting to know like how they wanted to approach it that way.
Yeah, the movie made me question, like going in, I thought Hugh Jackman was the embezzler, right? But when Allison Janney got arrested, I thought maybe he's not the embezzler. Maybe it's going to be like about him. I don't know. I thought maybe that it would go down a different path than it did. And so it did keep me guessing.
Yeah, well, I think the movie where we know that he's done wrong and he's trying not to get caught, I mean, that's more like, well, it's not quite like The Fugitive, but it's more of that type of movie, right? A bit more of a thriller. And yeah, I mean, I like how this movie unveils information and then we have to recontextualize things we've seen earlier. And I mean, that's one of the things that like keeps me interested in this film. It keeps me like leaning in a little bit closer to like, I want to find out more. But the big one for me that I really enjoyed was when you realize that Hugh Jackman is in on this embezzlement and you think back to like his reaction the first time everybody found out about Allison Janney's embezzlement, and he goes in and talks to the audit guy, and he's like, I need to know a number. I need to know how much. And I wasn't sure at that point if Hugh Jackman was in on it. I thought actually the movie might end up being the whole school board getting drugged through the mud and him being accused and maybe having to prove his innocence when really it was Allison Janney's character that had done all of this and he was unaware, and it might be kind of like having to prove his innocence. I thought we might be going there, you know, at that point. I just kind of believed it. And then like rug pulled out from under me and I started recontextualizing everything. It's a lot of fun in that sense.
He's such a great guy when we first get to know him, you know, like he's so charming and likable.
He's handling like and dealing with like the snotty parent coming after him.
Yeah.
I also like the added element that like him trying to be like put up the facade of being like a good caring principal is actually like what sets up the pieces to start falling for him. Like encouraging Rachel to not phone it in. And like, it's only phoning it in if you phone it in, you know, like there's no such thing as a puff piece if you don't let it be a puff piece. Like that's essentially just like him cementing his own fate right there.
Yeah, that's pretty great.
I admire that.
And I liked that from like the word go. That's kind of one of those things, you know, when it's happening, like, oh, he's setting himself up. He shouldn't be telling her this information. He should let it be a puff piece. But I guess I thought that it would lead to his downfall in the sense that she would uncover all of this other stuff, you know. Then realized it was like he was who he was at that time, you know. It's pretty fun.
Yeah.
I did want to talk about the last interaction with the snotty mom, you know, that's trying to get her kid into the accelerated class, and the kid is trying to say accelerated. And I found that performance, that monologue about the IndyCar 500 and the cinder block that's running behind him, and him like his stress level just rising, and as he tells the story, and he's accelerated. I found that really funny. That was one of the scenes that I found pretty funny.
I was going to ask you guys, when was this movie filmed? Because when Alex Wolff showed up on the screen, I was convinced it was another actor because he looked too young. Like, he looks younger in this movie than he does in Hereditary, which came out like 2 years ago. Well,
I think they made him look pretty like psychologically distressed and beaten down by that in Hereditary some. Because actually, I haven't seen the newest Jumanji yet. But he looks about the same as he did in the original of like the Jumanji reboots.
Yeah, that movie's old. That's what I'm saying. Is like, I feel like I've seen this guy more recently and he looks older. So I was wondering if this movie was actually filmed a long time ago. And by long time ago, I mean like a couple years. But I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe.
I don't know. He looked like a high school kid to me.
Looks like 2018, I think.
The magic of makeup and how we as a society
and
have
costuming.
We have as a society have accepted older actors playing high school. I think we're getting away from that more and more these days, but there's a certain level of acceptance I think we have towards it.
Yeah. We're definitely better than we were in like the Sam Raimi Spider-Man days.
Yeah, or the Scream days, to bring those back up.
Wow.
The other thing I wanted to talk about too is something you said earlier in like the non-spoiler section, Chris, made me think about this, but I like the sort of bookends of the movie of him coming out to the stage in front of the crowd. Obviously the last one is like this sort of like fantasy in his mind going out on the stage, and now they're the first place school instead of the fourth place school or whatever. But I like that, going with the theme of the movie of like pulling it back and letting you see more and letting you see more. Just visually, the opening of the movie, we follow Hugh Jackman's character from behind down this hallway. It's this sort of like epic building speech, and like it sort of builds up his character as this like big, important, great guy, because Ray Romano's giving this like speech off screen about how great he is, and there's cheering. And then I like in the fantasy, we see that him coming down the hallway from like the front, and we see like him going through the light and like the shadows and like the age on his face and just like the worry and all of that. And like, we can kind of see everything and see what this guy's all about. And that's why like we end the movie shooting that sort of like same sequence, but from the front of him. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I'll have to watch it again because I don't know that I picked up on that.
I don't know. I noticed this sort of thing because there was a screenwriting book I read a long time ago, and it's maybe a little bit more on the money than most movies are, because this particular screenwriter is not very subtle. But he was talking about how the end of your movie and the beginning of your movie should sometimes, like, your characters should be like in something, or there should be sort of like mirror opposite imagery to show that like things have changed or something like that.
Right.
So
yeah.
I think about that sort of thing sometimes when I'm watching movies, and that like punched me in the face about this movie. Is that like, oh, look, we're not following him from behind. And I think it's just because that tracking shot stuck out to me because it was really cool in the opening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Makes sense. Do we have anything else about Bad Education, guys?
No, I don't think so. I'll be interested to see what Corey Finley does next. I don't want to say that this is a step down for him from Thoroughbreds, but Thoroughbreds is
like I was saying earlier, it's just more straightforward.
Yeah, it's just based on a true story, straightforward story, which is interesting. But I just still feel like there's that ceiling for me on this type of movie.
Yeah, and I think it may just be like when you read the synopsis, or when you're like searching through stuff. This isn't a movie that I'm going to click on. Like if it hadn't been for Corey Finley, I don't know that I would have been super interested in it. I'm glad we watched it quite a bit, but it's not necessarily the movie I get excited about,
I would have dismissed it as like a boring HBO original.
Yeah, that's kind of how it would have gone. I mean, Hugh Jackman intrigues me and stuff like that, but also, it's just like, it's not quite there. But I do think that it's much better than what my expectations were for it. And I do think that there are sections of like cool style. It's just not like Thoroughbreds, like it's not quirky necessarily, but maybe it's more of an examination of like the Hugh Jackman character as opposed to like, I don't know, that quirkiness that the two girls had. But I mean, like, there's this one shot that I really liked, and this is kind of the part where, like, the Barry Lyndon thing, but it's the part where the son, Allison Janney's son, is going to, he's starting the housing project, you know, and the camera starts up really close on him and then just slowly pulls back until, like, eventually we see the whole house. And I think stuff like that, while not, like, it doesn't call attention to itself, but it is... I enjoy it, and I enjoy that, like, kind of subtleness to it, you know? So I do enjoy it, and I think it'll be interesting to see what he does next.
Yeah, that shot stuck out in particular to me. This thing where he's, like, up on the balcony and he's measuring the balcony with, like, a tape measure. That stuck out to me, too, that zoom in particular. And there's several other ones that are on, like, we start out close on Hugh Jackman and zoom out. There's one... Oh, man, I can't remember what happened. I should have written it down, but I never write down things while I'm watching movies. Because it's distracting. But there's a shot where we're zooming in on somebody at the end of a scene, and then we cut to it's Alex Wolff and Geraldine. Rachel is the character's name. They're in the cafeteria, and he's like seeing the article for the first time and asking her, "Are you sure you want to go through?" But when we cut to the new scene, we're zooming in still. It's like the exact same speed of zoom, and it almost makes it feel like this like seamless zoom, even though we cut to two different scenes or cut from one scene to another. I thought that was really, really well done. And it kind of kept the tension going from the end of the scene and brought it into this new cafeteria scene without having to, build that tension again, which I thought worked really well.
Yeah, I agree.
Great. Well, I guess that does it for this episode then.
I guess so.
It does indeed.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for listening. And then, of course, as always, thank you, Jake Wagner Russell, for doing our intro and outro music. If you want to hear more of his music, you can do so at soundcloud.com/bopscotch.
All right. Stay tuned to this channel. Our next episode will be a casually criterion for Do the Right Thing. So get ready.
Do the right thing and listen.
Yeah. You do the right thing, listener.
That's right. And if you want to let us know your thoughts on Bad Education, whether we were right or wrong in our interpretations or thoughts on it, please let us know. You can also ask us questions about Do the Right Thing. Send those to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at casualcinecast. You can also email us at casualcinemedia@gmail.com.
Thanks so much for listening, guys. Stay safe out there, and we will see you next time.
See you later.
Have a good one.
May the 4th be with you.
Good job.
Thanks.
That would have been a missed opportunity.
Yeah, by the time people hear this, it'll be like probably May 7th or something.
Yeah.
Whoops.
But the 4th can still be with them if they want.
That's true. Just rip it out of the calendar, put it in your pocket.